All right, Kyle, you are not Kyle, you are fear. And the most important thing is to make a distinction between you and fear. And I'm asking fear about Kyle.
You are about ready to hear my fear interview with Nathaniel McGuire, who is a life coach and a marriage and family counselor. In this experience, he asks you to take on your fear, which means you actually step in and take on the personality of fear in third person. As you listen in on my fear interview with Nathaniel, walk with me through the process and ask yourself, what is fear saying to you?
Fear, what is the situation where it's easy to influence or cause Kyle to worry or panic? What is he doing? Where is he at?
I can usually cause Kyle panic when we are in social situations where he feels like he has the potential of being judged by other people. So anxiety when you're walking into a room or you're going to a party or you're meeting people for the first time is usually when I can cause panic.
Tell me other scenarios.
Challenging situations at work can cause panic and fear, where he will not tackle something challenging because he is too afraid of failing with a big challenge or project or whatever it is. He tends to get it done, but maybe could have spent more time on it. So it's more he avoids challenging situations.
So, in challenging situations and social situations, what is it you tell him is going to happen?
Social situation is the person that he is meeting or the people he is hanging out with. He won't meet their standards. And I really am making up what those standards are.
And in the challenging situation, what is it you're telling him or making him fearful of that's going to happen?
He isn't going to deliver the right answer or project or guide his team in the right direction, and they're going to fail or he is going to fail. He is not going to be seen as worthy of the position he has been given.
So, in essence, you tell him he's in both situations, he's going to fail.
Correct.
And when he's judged, he is not living up to the expectations of those who are judging him. So he's failed there too.
Correct.
And when you tell him that that's going to happen, does he ever believe you?
Most of the time.
Most of the time. And then how does that make him feel when he believes you?
He feels inadequate, not being in the right position, or what's the saying that you humans say? Sheep in wolf's clothing.
It sounds like what you tell Kyle is that he's not worthy.
Yes.
And when you tell him that, what does it do to his energy? Does it give him energy or take energy away from him?
Most of the time it will take energy because of anxiety.
Is it possible that he doesn't really realize how much this is you doing this and not him? That you are overwhelmingly telling him that he's going to be judged in a situation, that he's going to fail in a situation? Is it possible that he just doesn't realize like how much this is you, making him fearful?
Yeah, 100%.
What do you think would happen if he knew that this was you and not him, and he could delineate the difference between you and him, and he could clearly see that, oh, this is just you feeding these thoughts and saying these things? What do you think he would do?
Well, other than the obvious answer of he would be less restless, I feel like he would be able to tackle feelings of inadequacy head on and understand not the head trash that's given him, but the true feelings of inadequacy, where they come from.
You don't want him to know the difference between you and him.
I would prefer not.
You would rather him think that you and him are one and the same. What's the goal you have for his life?
Him not being successful in really anything.
In anything.
Because if you look where he puts time and energy, it would be social situations with family and friends, and it would be career.
So you just want him to fail. That's your goal for his life.
Yeah.
Is he aware of how much time you spend with him? How much time do you think you spend with Kyle telling him he's not worthy in situations?
Most of the day.
Tell me the situations where you're telling him he's going to fail, he's not worthy, where he's going to be judged, and no matter how much you're in his ear telling him that, where is he at and what is he doing when he doesn't listen to you?
Well, most of the time, it will take a while, but he won't listen to me most of the time.
Most of the time. No matter if you're in his ear, he still pushes past you. What are the circumstances? What is the environment? What is he doing where he pushes past you? What is that?
If we're talking about from the social situation, he usually either knows he needs to go to something and he will just go eventually. He'll have support systems with him, friends or his wife or parents or whatever that will be with him. From a work environment, he'll just eventually do it.
Why?
Because he's afraid, because I keep pushing him to be afraid of failure, and eventually he does it because he doesn't want to fail.
Isn't there also a part of Kyle that when he is in his certain element that he really believes he can succeed? What are those environments where he believes he can succeed?
He usually believes he can succeed when there is chaos. When it's so chaotic that it's his responsibility to solve something, where it's up to him to make quick decisions to save a situation, is usually where he pushes back pretty hard.
So is he gifted in those areas?
Yes, because he usually succeeds.
Do you tell him that?
I don't.
No. You tell him that the reason he's successful is because he's afraid to fail. So that's why he pushes. You try to make him believe that, like, he needs you to succeed.
Yeah, correct.
Is that true?
Yes,
That's what you tell him.
that's what I tell him, yeah.
I hear that the reason he succeeds is because there's certain areas he's gifted at. It's not because he's just afraid to fail. But you don't tell him that.
No, why would I tell him that?
You wouldn't.
I wouldn't.
What do you think would happen if he realized he just doesn't need you to succeed, that he just needs to maximize on his gift and he doesn't need to be motivated because he's fearful he's going to fail? What do you think that would do to him if he knew that?
My guess is he would probably try really hard to work on ignoring me.
Do you want him to do that?
I don't. That would be lonely.
Yes. What is your goal for his life?
Well, my goal for his life is that he is so used to hearing fear and failure, or at least hearing the fact that he will fail, that he will never get past it.
Yeah, I think your goal is to control him, because I actually hear Kyle's actually a pretty successful dude, but you don't tell him that, and you even want him to believe that he is successful because of you. So you want him literally to give you the credit
Yeah.
for everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fear. So isn't there a essence of Kyle that actually has faith
Faith in what?
in his gifts?
I would assume so. I've never seen it.
Of course not. You don't point that out, do you?
I do not.
No. What are the areas you really believe Kyle is gifted at that you don't always tell him?
I believe he's actually gifted in most of the things I tell him he's not. So social situations, the work environment, being empathetic, being a good father, being a good husband, all those things where he probably is, but I don't ever want him to know that.
He's actually good at those things, huh?
Yeah.
You don't tell him that.
No.
So you're a liar.
Yes.
You're relentless.
Very much so.
And you're relentless.
Yes.
Like you won't stop.
No.
So what I hear is that you constantly make Kyle think about failure. You rob him of his faith. You remind him of things in the past where he has failed. When he wants to think back about successes, you don't want him thinking back. And you make him fearful of relying on faith.
Right.
And these things rob him of his energy, and they also cause him to be very anxious and restless. And you try to keep him from going into spaces that he's invited to or could be opportunities, but you tell him that if he goes in these opportunities, he's going to be judged and not feel worthy, and so you try to keep him from these situations.
Right.
And you spend a lot of time in his head reminding him that his success actually comes from you.
Yes.
But actually, you don't remind him that it is you that causes all of these toxic things in his life. You also make him believe he's not a good father, a good husband, and you remind him that he doesn't have any empathy and compassion, or you remind him of his times where he didn't have empathy or compassion.
Right.
Okay. So are you good or evil? Your laugh there kind of told me. But are you good or evil?
I believe I'm good, but deep down, it's evil for sure.
So you're evil.
Yes.
Do you tell Kyle that?
No.
What would happen if Kyle, who's good with people, good in a chaotic situation, can recognize when you're in the room and your energy is present, and he knows that it's his faith that overcomes you, and it's faith that can push you out of an environment? What will Kyle do?
Ignore me.
And it sounds like Kyle, like if he puts his mind to something, like he's relentless, right?
Yes.
So what would happen if he relentlessly understood it as you attacking him, and then he relentlessly wanted to push you out of his life?
I would disappear. I'd have to go find a new host.
So you're scared of Kyle, aren't you?
Yeah.
I hear that he's very gifted with people. I hear that if he could just really realize it was his faith and his gifts, and he didn't need to rely on you, his life would be different. So the last thing I want to know is, what would his life be like without you? Tell him.
More fulfilled.
In what ways?
When he is not worried about what I'm telling him, he will have the time, energy, and mental disposition to invest in him, like his true self, not me.
How can he investigate his true self when you refuse to let him go deep into himself?
He can't.
He can't. You don't want him to do that.
No.
What will Kyle discover if he goes deep into himself?
That everything I tell him is wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Is Kyle a good person?
Yeah.
Do you tell him that?
No.
You don't. What do you tell him he is? Tell him.
A lot of things. I mean, the exact opposite of what we have talked about today. Like,
Yeah.
Instead of being selfless, he's selfish. Instead of caring about others, he doesn't. Instead of being successful, he's not.
So how is it that everything you're doing is evil and you're relentlessly attacking his mind? Kyle's story says that he doesn't go about constantly being negative, constantly being evil, teaching people how to listen to you, and you really exist. So if you exist, doesn't also like a healthy version and a healthy energy exist too that would empower him?
Yes.
Do you tell him that?
No.
Okay. What do you tell him in regards to death and dying? What is it you try to make him fearful of in regards to death and dying?
That he will not have the impact he should on anything. A lot of my drive is about impact and making sure impact on others, and that I keep telling myself that I don't, even though I know I do. I think it revealed something new in the fact that everything that I strive to do, even though I'm telling myself that it is selfish, is really just about impact. Whether that's growing a company or the neighborhood you live in or the school, your kids, it's constantly about how are you impacting others, which also is really stressful to even think about. Because ultimately that's what I care about, is other people's view of me, which is also fear-based. I think that the value deep down for all of us is that you want to love and you want to be loved. And I think love thy neighbor fits with helping others, and it fits with most of the way that I try to live.
When is the first time you remember coming into Kyle's life telling him that he's not worthy, that in a social situation, that he's going to fail, that he's not quite living up to the people around him? When's the first time you came into his life to tell him these things?
He went to a baseball camp when he was 5 or 6 years old, and he definitely had a lot of feelings of inadequacy just because he didn't know how to play the game. And I'm pretty sure he got hit in the face with a baseball, and he never played baseball again. I'm sure that would be one of the first times he felt inadequacy, because he actually did fail, or what I told him was failure, even though he was a child for the most part.
So you've been in with him for a long time.
Sure.
That's part of the problem. You really know him.
Yes.
And you basically are telling him you're going to keep him safe from embarrassing himself and getting hurt.
Yeah.
Because in that moment, I would think he was humiliated.
Yeah, what he believed was humiliation, but was probably not the case.
You mean what you tell him was humiliation?
Yes.
Yeah. So you told him he was humiliated. He had failed.
Yep.
And you're there to remind him of his failure.
Yep.
And you're still doing it. So in essence, you're Kyle's friend.
Oh, yeah. Best friends.
Best friend. Is that what you tell him? That you're his friend trying to keep him safe from humiliation?
Yeah.
Does he believe you?
Yes.
And does he believe that he can live life without you?
No.
Because that's what you tell him?
That's what I tell him, yes.
So Kyle doesn't want anything to do with you. If he knew who you were, he would absolutely tell you to get
absolutely not.
Yeah. So what is he going to do about you?
He is going to start ignoring me, more than likely.
That's what he's going to start doing, isn't it? You're actually afraid because he's relentless. When he sees you and he puts his mind to something to succeed, he typically does it. And if he puts his mind to this, he'll succeed and kick you out of his life, won't he?
Yeah.
And he will know that it's not you. He's not successful because of you. He's successful because of the faith that he has, his core beliefs, and his gifts.
Correct.
All right. So you simply need what I call a fear statement. This is something that when you sense or hear or feel fear, you say back to it. It empowers you, makes a distinction between you and it, and causes you now to immediately overcome it. Okay? But it's something you say to yourself or out loud. Okay? Everybody has their own statement.
Can it just be fuck you?
So Kyle, how has your understanding of this small vignette from your past, which was not about baseball at all, and
Sure.
not actually about your own experience with the success or failure of the moment, but more an awareness of other people's judgment on what was happening to you in that moment. How has that shown up in your life today?
All the time, all the time. I think that I care too much about the other people's judgment of me every day. And that has a lot to do with the fear interview in general. You know, it doesn't matter how many times how many quarters we hit, or how many speaking engagements I do, or how many networking events I go to, or how many people I meet, or how many accolades I get. I always feel like somebody's thinking he can't play baseball, that he can't do it, basically.
So there's something here that I'm observing. Whenever you get close to the emotional heart of what you're experiencing, your body physically deflects you off with humor.
Yes.
Every time.
Yes.
And so this paradox of you talking in your fear interview about, in some ways, not being able to be fully present in your own life and experiences because you almost are outside of it, sitting in the seats that you're believing others are sitting in, observing, you almost join them in that chair and observing your own life instead of saying, no, I'm in my seat and I'm owning all that I'm experiencing, and I'm going to allow myself to go fully into the experience, even if it's like feeling yourself fall. And I feel you go to the edge of that and pull back with humor, and go to the edge and pull back.
What's interesting is that a lot of my memories of inadequacy was self-inflicted, because I don't remember like specifically when I caught the ball or got hit in the face or I was crying and I couldn't find anybody to console me. I don't remember other people like laughing, or it was just all self-inflicted. I think that's also a reason why it's hard for me to claim happiness through success, whether that's kids or work, because I never feel like it was me. But I think a lot of the fear is self-inflicted for me.
How many people in a given day or week, either inside the walls of Lessonly or outside, reach out to you for advice? Just estimate.
5 a day?
5 people a day.
Yeah.
Okay. Because their assumption about what's in your head and experiences, your collective observations about the world, is it wise or foolish?
Wise.
So I think it's interesting. The external world says 5 people a day. I think that's probably off by 3x. But really, that you don't trust your own thoughts. External people would say there is good in the way that you assemble, find context in, extract learning from, make observations of, unique perspective on. And yet you aren't willing to sort of trust that in your own mind.
Correct. I think it goes back to no matter what I say or do, I'll never fully believe that it's true. Like deep down. And I honestly, I have no idea why that is.
So when I was getting ready to go through this fear journey, I knew in my subconscious soul that I had a journey I needed to go on to be able to get a more complete understanding, because I felt fear was omnipresent every minute of my life. And like you, I could overpower it, but I knew there was a deeper level of understanding that I needed. And I was certain that if I went on this journey, what was going to happen was that all of those relationships closest to me, and that at the end of it, I would have understanding, but I would be alone. I got to the place where I was like, okay with that for some reason. Like I needed clarity, and if I was alone, then I would deal with that. It was a different issue. And what I learned fear says to me is that if I step totally into things that I love and the things that give me energy and the person I feel like I'm most myself when I am her, that it would be too loud for everything and everyone around me. And that if I stepped into that I would become this self-indulgent monster. So what I learned is that fear wants to say, you are for self. You are going to be lonely. You're going to be an indulgent pig. You're going to be all about you, and everything else is going to be dim, and you're going to be alone. When I came into this fear journey I started mine out with saying, I can't even read emails when people send me, when I know it's positive news. I can't open it. I can't open it. I don't want to believe it's true. And it's like those emails would literally sit unopened for 3-4 weeks. And it was deflecting that I just cannot handle believing anything good about me is true.
What's interesting is that I'm the same way when it comes to the positivity, like ignoring the positive outcome. I will work really hard to get to a certain point and then not celebrate. Like we were talking before we came on, where I don't listen to any podcast interviews. I've done a lot and I haven't listened to one. And that's fear. It's like, I don't want to, I'm afraid that I said something dumb, which is 100% never the case. You know, I worked really hard to get 40 under 40 when I was 24. I didn't really celebrate. It was just on to the next thing. I think it all stems from this idea. Like people talk a lot about humility and being humble. I think humility in some cases comes from a deep-seated fear of being found out that you're actually selfish and that you actually care about the accolade. And, you know, when somebody congratulates me, I always say, oh, it was the team, it wasn't me, or I appreciate that, but I don't need, you know, you don't need to say that. When in reality, you do need to take some responsibility for the success in order to fully understand why it worked and why you were successful, whether it was parenting or work. And I think it comes back to the main point, which is I don't ever go deep. So I don't fully understand who I am to begin with because I haven't spent the time to understand it. And not really knowing what actually, I know I'm good at certain things because the world tells me that I am, that I then choose to ignore, which is crazy if you think about it. It's a crazy process. But I keep coming back to this humility thing where you're taught that you have to always be selfless and always have humility. And I think that especially being raised in a evangelical Christian household where is very much a part of it. You're terrified to recognize happiness or success.
I can relate to so much of what you're saying on a lot of different levels, including likely the environments that we grew up in and a growth and understanding that making ourselves small does not serve anyone. In the process of like even going through this experience of Scare Confident and asking others, like other good character people to walk through this field journey is, what does it unlock in the people around you when you begin to stand confidently in who your talents are? Because we coach our people all the time. You got to know your talents. I need you to step into them. We will go faster, quicker if you know what you're good at and you practice the crap out of it. And we talk about that mechanically in our roles, but we don't do that kind of practice in our identity work, right? And like who we are. And everything accelerates around us when we're crisp in that, the identity part of here's who we are. And how do we stand tall in that? And we practice this in the skills of our jobs and all that kind of like minutia. but we don't really get to the like pillar piece of standing tall in your identity. And then that gets applied in a lot of different roles that we play, you know, in our jobs, in our families, etc.
I think that going through this process, it's understanding what true validation is for you personally, right? And like I'm still searching for validation constantly. And I would argue that if you looked at it purely on paper, at least from a career perspective, I've been very successful in what I do, and I still daily search for validation from everything, everyone. And going through this process, I've learned that it's because I've never taken the time to fully understand myself. And so you just continually try to validate and validate and validate and validate. I'm glad that I'm good at what I do. Do I love what I do? I don't know. I love the validation that it gives me, but I haven't done anything else, right? It's very interesting that I haven't done anything else. It's like, would I be a good singer-songwriter? Probably not, but I haven't really done it, right? I played guitar for 12 years, but I was always backup guitarist. And the validation for me in a band was I got all of the gigs for the band to play at.
What is fear telling you right now as we're on the edge of like launching some of these words to the outside world, and you're kind of on the edge of the cliff of like at least pulling the thread?
I think fear is telling me what will happen when all these people that seek advice or work with me or my friends and family find out that I actually have no idea what the fuck I'm doing.
If you would poll the people in your life that are kind of in your first or second circle, what percentage would say, oh yeah, I know about this stuff that Kyle's talking about in this fear interview, and what percentage would say, are you serious?
I would say a very large percentage would say they have no idea. Very small percentage would say, yeah, I feel like that was the case, but I didn't really know it.
Why do you think that is, that a large percentage of people close to you would say, I didn't know?
I think a lot of life or the way that I live is surface level. And there's kind of strings of this throughout this entire process where it's very hard for me to go deep on certain questions and topics because I don't know. And I think that's also fear, saying you actually have no idea. When in reality, I do. And I think a lot of it has to do with I'm afraid of opening up even to the people that are closest to me.
Why do you think that is?
I'm afraid that they will disown me. That's probably the biggest thing, is that they will not agree with my view or be confused because, you know, we've known each other for so long that they're finally figuring this stuff out. Or they just don't want to have the conversation, which might be the biggest fear, is that if I bring stuff up or topics to talk about and they're also surface level, they won't go deep, and they kind of shove it off, like we will uncover that the friendships or the relationships were actually not real to begin with.
After Kyle's fear interview with Nathaniel, he set out on a journey. We call it the fear journey. And over the last several months, he's spoken to friends and families and some colleagues and people he really respects to better explore his own fears by understanding how those fit and having conversations really directly and intentionally about what happens when you speak your fears out loud. Kyle finishes out his journey by then talking to Nathaniel and myself about his growth. And if I'm honest, I wasn't sure what would happen. As we started this idea of seeing, could I transfer the experience that I had in my fear journey to someone else? It's been remarkable to see how Kyle has just really grown as a leader, and I think stepped into himself even more fully than we see him already. You can continue to hear his journey by listening to the following episodes. And I encourage you to listen to each of these and think through, what are your own fears? And how would your life be served by having intentional conversations about the fear that so desperately wants to quiet the greatness that is inside of you? If you're interested in more intentionally exploring your own fear and going on your own self-guided fear journey, download the fear interview that we developed with Nathaniel McGuire. Nathaniel is who did both my fear interview and Kyle's. A link is located in the show notes, or you can also text me, 317-350-8921. Text the word fear to 317-350-8921. And that's how I'll know that you would like a copy of the self-guided fear interview. Thanks for listening.